and turn things over to Cassie. We have it's all live presentation tonight. There's no slideshow. This is all the real deal. So maybe Cassie, I'll pin you here and then you can get started.
All righty. Oh, look at that. I'm looking at myself. Perfect. Well, welcome everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I am, in fact, my name is Beekeeper Cassie, and I'm so excited. My job here at Honeybee Center in Surrey, BC is teaching people about bees. And so I'm super excited to be able to meet some new people tonight and show you my bees. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to start with teaching you a few things that you need to know before we go into our beehive. Then we're going to learn all about who lives in a beehive, the difference between our native species and honeybees, an egg, a larva, a pupa, what that looks like. And then we're going to go outside and we're going to open up my hive together so we can take a closer look. And as was already mentioned, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat. We're going to try to get to all of your questions. I'm always here to answer all of your questions. So if we don't answer your question, or if you come up with something after our time is over, then you're always welcome to have an adult reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer all of your bee and beekeeping questions. So I'd like to start by reminding you that in North America, we have over 900 species of bees that live here that are native to North America. We have bees like bumblebees, mason bees, miner bees, leafcutter bees, cuckoo bees, fairy bees. We have all different types of bees that live here and are native to North America. And honeybees do not come from North America. Nope. In fact, if we want bees here in North America, you know what we have to do? We have to get them in the mail. So if we want honeybees here in North America, in our case, I call up my beekeeper friend over in New Zealand. They put some queen bee and some honeybees in this box with some food, and they ship it over on an airplane. I pick up my bees in the middle of the night because bees don't like to fly at night. And then I come home and I shake them into my beehive. And then my job is checking on those bees every 10 days. That's a beekeeper's job. But here's the thing. All of these bees that are native to North America and have always been here, they don't have a beekeeper. Almost all of these bees are solitary. That means that they live all by themselves without a huge family. Honeybees live in a colony of up to 80,000 bees. So they have a big family that's working together. Almost all these bees make their nest under the ground. Honeybees build their nest up high, so anything that happens to the ground is not as damaging to them. So after our time is done together tonight, I'm going to ask you to help these native bees because they need your help. And we're going to come up with a couple of ideas of how we can help those bees. But while we're here together right now, we're going to learn a little bit about honeybees. So if you know who the mom of all of the honeybees is, maybe you can put an emoji or type into the chat, who's the mom of all of the honeybees? And you can tell that she's the mom of all the bees because she's got a really long abdomen. That's right. It's definitely the queen. And you can tell that she's the queen bee because she's longer than all of the other bees. And she's got this really long abdomen here. Usually her body is shinier than all of the other bees. And that's because she's older. She can live up to 7 years in her native environment. Here in Canada, she can live up to 2 years. So she's shinier because she's got less hair on her body. And often there's a circle of bees around her because she can't feed or clean herself. The queen bee's job is laying eggs, and that's all she does. She doesn't collect honey. She doesn't build the hive. She doesn't take care of the babies. Her only job is laying eggs. And she can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day when there's flowers in the environment. That means she's laying an egg almost every 45 seconds. Her day looks like this. Egg. Egg, egg, all day. That's all she does. She's so busy laying eggs, she can't do any of the other jobs inside the hive. All right, who thinks they know the name of the boy bees who live inside the hive. They have a name that starts with the letter D, and it's maybe something that you've seen flying around that's not living in our environment. The boy bees are called the drones. You got it, the drones, that is correct. And there he is there. And you can tell that it's a boy bee because he's quite a lot wider than all of the other bees. But I also want to point out that he's got a round butt or a round abdomen. So you can tell that it's a boy because he's got this round abdomen here. And that's because he doesn't have a stinger. A stinger is a way for a female insect to lay an egg. So boy bees, male bees, don't have stingers because they don't lay eggs. Here's the other thing that you will notice about the boy bee. I want you to take a closer look at his head. And what you'll notice is that his head is quite a bit rounder than the other bees, but it's completely covered in huge eyeballs. The drones have huge eyes because their job is flying out and finding queens from a different colony to mate and spread the genetics of the hive. So you can tell that it's a drone because he's got really big eyes. All right, so you're at home, but what I want you to do is put your hands out like this. If you're a girl bee, your eyes, your compound eyes, are on the side of your head like this. And your compound eyes have 6,900 cells here, 6,900 cells here. You can see all of the colors of the rainbow, and you can even see the direction of the sunlight. Now, if you're a boy bee, put your hands like this. Spread your fingers as wide as you can. Now, put your hands on your face like this. Boy bee's eyes cover their whole entire head. That's how you can tell he's a boy bee. They cover his whole head. His eyes are just like the female's eyes. They can see all the different colors and they can see the direction of the sunlight. And they're using those eyes to find a queen. Now, all bees, both boys and girls, also have 3 silly eyes on the top of their silly head with a very silly name. And the name of the silly eyes is ocilli. The silly eyes see light and dark. And it's how the bees can know if they're how high they're flying off the ground, if there's a predator over their head, or if it's getting dark and it's time for them to go home. All right, now I want to talk about the worker bees, the female bees. They're going to be the smallest bees in the hive, but they make up 90% of the colony. So there are a lot of worker bees. And when we open the beehive, that's probably what we're going to see. Worker bees only live 45 days in the spring and summer. And in those 45 days, they do all of the jobs inside the colony. So let's read this poem together because it tells us all of the jobs of the worker bees. This poem's called In the Trees, Honeybees by Laurie Mortensen, and it goes like this. Morning light, warm and bright, in the trees, honeybees. Blossoms out, dancing scout. The scout bee flies off out of her beehive. She looks for and finds nectar, pollen, tree sap, and water, brings a sample back home in her honey crop, spits it out in her sister's mouth, and then draws a map. So if you'd like to draw a bee map with me, this is what you have to do. First, we're going to flap our wings. If I find a small patch of flowers, I'm just going to do small flapping. If I find a large patch of flowers, I'm going to do large flapping. So how frantic she flaps her wings is the size of the crop that she found. This is important information because if we're a large colony of honeybees, we probably want to go to the large patch of flowers. The next dance move she does is waggles her abdomen, just like this. Now, the amount of times that she clicks her abdomen is the distance from the front entrance of her hive to the patch of flowers. Now, I don't know what unit of measurement that the bees are using, but it would be like 5 feet from our front door. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If the food is 3 feet from our front door, it might look like this. 1, 2, 3. All right, let's put those 2 dance moves together. If we find a small patch of flowers 3 feet away, small patch of flowers, 1, 2, 3. If we find a large patch of flowers 5 feet away, large patch of flowers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are really important things to know. Now we know how big and how far. But the last dance move, the bees dance up on the frame if food is north to the sun, down on the frame if food is south, east, and west. The bee dances around the frame in a figure 8 to tell her sisters what direction they have to fly to find the food. So that is the job of the dancing scout. Then her sisters fly through the sky. Her nectar sweet pollen treat. The collector bees are going to follow the map and fly to the nectar and pollen and bring it back home to share with their family. Harvest home honeycomb. A 10-day-old bee, her job is constructing the beehive. So she eats and eats and eats and eats 8 parts honey and then sweats wax off of her abdomen to make the beeswax. It looks like this. She eats and eats and eats, and she sweats wax off of her abdomen, just like that. Then she uses her front legs to mold it into honeycomb, and over time, it's gonna look like this. So building the honeycomb is the job of a 10-day-old construction bee. Now, what's really cool is if she builds a small honeycomb cell, that's for a girl bee. If she builds a larger size honeycomb cell, that's for a boy bee. It's a little hard to tell, but this cell is larger in size, and that's for a drone. So when the queen finds a large cell, she lays a boy baby. She lays an egg. When she finds a small cell, she lays an egg and fertilizes it, and that's going to be a worker bee. Harvest home honeycomb. All right. Feed and clean the precious queen. The queen bee is so busy laying eggs, she doesn't have time to feed and clean herself. She's so busy laying these little tiny eggs in here. She doesn't have time to feed and clean herself. So that's the job of the nurse bees. The nurse bees are baby newborn bees who hatch out, and their very first job, because they're sweaty and hot, is they find the queen bee and they feed her their forehead sweat, which is called royal jelly. The nurse bees also bring lots of food to hungry brood. Brood is a name for baby animals, and in the case of honeybees, brood is eggs, larva, pupa. So this is the life cycle of a honeybee. First, the queen lays an egg. An egg is an egg for 3 days. A drone, a worker, or a queen bee, an egg is an egg for 3 days. So when we find eggs in the hive, we know that the queen was there within 3 days. That egg hatches into a larva. A larva looks like this. This is when the bee can start to eat. If it's a drone and it eats nectar and pollen and royal jelly, it turns into a drone. If it's a female bee and it eats nectar and pollen, it turns into a worker bee. If it's a female bee and it eats royal jelly, it turns into a queen. As this larva is eating, it grows into a nice, plump, juicy larva, and we want to see a nice, white, wet, juicy larva in there. That means it's healthy. Then it pupates. It turns into a pupa. This is maybe my favorite because it kind of looks like an alien. At this stage, the worker bees cap it over with honeycomb like this, or with beeswax like this, and it pupates for 13 days. On day 21, she hatches out as an adult worker bee, and her first job is nurse to the queen. Water drips, sip, 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 too much heat, 1,000 beats, bear attack, sting and smack. Now, the guard bee, she's the bee that might use her stinger. And that's because it's her job to protect the food and the babies. But honeybees don't want to sting because they don't want to die. If a honeybee stings, she dies. But they will use their stinger to protect their family. Honeybees only sting because they're scared. So next time you see a bee, I want you to think, should you act like a bear? Ah! Or should you act like a beekeeper, moving slowly and calmly and walking away backwards? I think you should act like a beekeeper. If a predator does get into the hive, the bees shake the wax, seal the cracks, gather more, winter store, fading light, homing flight, chilly night, cluster tight. Bees don't fly at night when it's cold, rainy, wet, windy. Morning light, warm and bright, in the trees, honeybees. All right, so if we're going to go into the beehive at this time of year, we just want to make sure that the queen is healthy and that there's lots of eggs and larvae in the hive. I'm also going to pay attention to if they have food, if they've started to collect nectar or pollen. If there's lots of pollen in there, that means that they're raising babies. If there's lots of nectar in there, that means that there's lots of adult bees. So I'm going to look for evidence inside the hive when we open it up. But if I take the lid off of my hive when we go outside, I might scare the bees. And we know that if we scare the bees, they might use their stinger. So there's two things that we need to do to make sure that we stay safe when we go into the hive. The first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to put on my beekeeping suit. So a beekeeper wears a white suit because predators, almost all predators, are dark colors. So I'm going to wear a light color, white in fact, so that the bees don't think I'm a predator. That's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to suit up in a white suit, just like this. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wear a veil over my face. This helps me remember not to flap my arms around while I'm beekeeping. The next thing I'm going to do is, and I don't have it here because it's outside smoking, is I'm going to light my smoker. So I'm going to move the camera outside. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and I'm going to move this camera outside in front of the hive so we can light the smoker and start opening up the hive together. So I'll be right back in about 5 minutes.
Thanks, Cassie. So I was thinking while we wait for Cassie to come back on the camera so we can go look in the hive, I was thinking that we could play a bee-themed virtual I Spy. So we can get up and stretch a little bit and maybe take 30, why don't we take like a minute? And if you just go and look around your house and try to find something that's yellow. And then you can bring it back. And if you don't want to turn your camera on, you can just maybe type in the chat and you can tell everybody what you brought back. So have a stretch and have a quick walk around your house and see if you can go find something yellow. We'll come back at like 6:21. Cassie's already back. Before we turn things back to Cassie, did anybody find anything yellow in their house that they want to share or show? I found my bright yellow rain jacket that I use when I go outside and it's raining. Oh, look at that. We got a poncho. We got some beautiful sunflowers. Amazing. Beautiful bright colors for spring. All right, Cassie, I can see you, so I'll pass the torch back to you.
All right, I'm just gonna make sure that we don't tip over here. There we go. Okay, everybody can see that there? Yep, all right. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get my smoker all lit up and ready to go. And so a smoker is made up of two parts, a barrel and a bellow. When I pump the bellow like this, it's gonna push air through here and out through the nozzle. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build a little fire inside my barrel. I'm gonna use something natural. That's really important. I'm gonna use wood chips, pine cones, burlap, something natural because I don't want to harm the bees. Once I've got my smoke going really, really thick, I almost want the flames to come right through so that I know that there's smoke all the way through. Then I can close my lid. There we go. There's a little bit of fire. I'm going to close my lid up tight. And I've got smoke coming out of the nozzle. Now it's important that I check the smoke out. I don't want it to hurt the bees. So I'm going to check it right on my hand to make sure that it doesn't hurt their wings. So this smoke is nice and cool. It's ready to go. I've also got my Hive tool here. This is what I'm going to use to crack everything open because the bees like to stick everything together. So when I'm all ready to go, I'm going to start by putting 3 puffs of smoke into the front of my beehive. And I don't see a lot of action outside right now, so probably most of the bees are inside the hive because it's a little bit cold outside. So I've got my suit all on. I'm going to put this around my fingers, doesn't slide down, and we're ready to roll. So the first thing I'm going to do is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to wait for a second so that the smoke can get into the hive. I'm going to add a little more at the front. And now I'm going to use my tool to crack the lid. And now I'm going to puff some smoke underneath the lid. And I'm just going to wait for a quick second. Once the smoke goes in, it's going to rise to the top, and then the bees are going to start moving to the bottom. The reason that I'm using smoke is because nobody likes smoke in their face. The bees are going to move down because they want to get away from the smoke at the top of the hive. But remember, it's cool and natural, so it's not going to hurt them. It's just like you and me sitting around a campfire. The next thing that's going to happen is that the guard bees aren't going to be able to communicate. Guard bees use smells to communicate that there's danger outside. So when you chose the color yellow, that was kind of cool for your scavenger hunt because the alarm pheromone inside the hive smells like bananas. So when you smell bananas around a beehive, you know that the bees are scared and you should back away slowly. The third thing that the smoke does is it makes the bees think they have to move because their house could be on fire. So what they do is they pack their suitcases. So remember, their honey crop is up here and they fill it by eating honey. Once their belly is really, really full, they can't flex it to sting. So I'm going to use a little bit of smoke so that the bees can't sting. So there's the inside of my lid. And as you can see, all the bees are just staying still there on that lid because they're probably packing their suitcases. I'm going to put this lid somewhere to the side where I'm not going to knock it over. So I'm going to put it down over here. Actually, first I'm just going to take a quick little peek and make sure that the queen is not on the lid. And now we can work into our hive. So going into a hive is a little bit like reading a book. You're going to start on the outside edge and see what you can find. And then you're going to work your way into the middle of the story. On the outside edge, we're going to have a little bit of information, but we're not going to find most of our information until we get to the middle of the hive. This hive right now has a feeder frame in it. So the first thing I need to do is pull out the feeder frame to give ourselves a little bit of room to work. So I'm going to carefully pull out this frame. Just like this. I wish you could feel it. It's very, very warm in here right now. The bees like to keep it at 33 degrees inside the hive. All right, I got it up a little bit here. I'm going to pull this frame out. And it's just a frame that we can use to feed the bees in case they have no food left. And they've gone and they've built honeycomb right into that frame. That's telling me that it's probably time to add another box because they don't have any room left. So right now is the time of year where I'm going to be thinking about adding a honey soup or adding a second box. I'm going to give this a little shake so that these bees go back into their home. Stand so you can see. And now I'm going to move this one out of our way too. All right. Now, because I gave it a little shake, I'm going to add a little bit more smoke. And then we're going to pull out our first frame. They're really stuck together. So I'm going to use this tool to pry them apart. And what I can already see on this frame is lots and lots of brood. So that is all capped brood at the top. So that's pupa, because what we know is that an egg and a larva have no capping on them, and then a pupa has a capping over it. It's kind of like a papery capping, just like that. What I'm noticing on the top of the frame is some bubbly looking brood. Those are drone cells, because remember, the drone bees are a little bit larger than the rest of the bees. So let's see if I can find a drone for you here. All right, let's see. Oh, there's one right there. He's kind of in the middle of all the bees. Oh, he got away. Here's a little drone bee. And I can pick him up. He's got the big eyes because he has no stinger. So there's the boy bee. And they're usually a little slower, like when they're on your hand. They don't want to just fly away because they need their sisters to feed them. I'm going to put him back in here. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start looking for the queen bee. So again, I'm going to look for a longer abdomen. I'm going to look for a circle of bees around her, a shiny body, but I'm also going to be looking underneath the bees to see if I can see eggs. Now, from where I'm standing here, I can see something really interesting. So I'm going to give this frame a little shake and get some of the bees off. There we go. Okay, so what I can see right here, I don't know if you can see it there, in the very middle, the bees are kind of climbing on it right now. I can see a peanut shell cell in the very middle of the picture here. There's a bee on it right now. Let's see if I can shake this a little bit more. And you see that big peanut shaped cell there. Does anybody think they know what that is? I also see lots of pollen stored around the bottom. And what I know is that pollen is for baby bees. And in the middle there, I can see that funny looking cell that they've built there. Does anybody know what that might be? That is a new queen. So this colony is building, you got it, Karen, this queen or this colony is building a couple of new queens. And I would expect that because it's spring and this colony is growing and they need to make a new queen if they're going to split and swarm and have a new colony. So now I'm going to have to make a decision to see if I'm going to split this colony into two Or if I'm, well, actually, that's what I have to do. I have to split this colony into two. So now I'm going to look on this side, see if I can see any eggs in this cell. Lots of larvae, lots of pollen, but I don't see any eggs. So I'm going to put this one back in here. There we go. And I'm going to add a little bit more smoke. All right, add a little bit more smoke because we're going to look at the next frame. So I'm going to pry this one apart. Careful, careful, careful. Kind of waiting until the little bees move out of my way. And here's our next frame of bees. All right, while you're looking, I'm going to see if I can spot the queen on this frame. Flip it around. I can't see the queen. I see lots of drones. If I'm looking down into the comb, I can see larvae, but I haven't found eggs yet. So I need to keep looking to find eggs. There's a lot of bees on that frame. All right, grab the smoker here. Add a little bit more smoke. Pull another frame out and let's have a look. We'll look at one more, maybe two more, because I'm hopeful that we're gonna find some eggs in this one. Oh, lots of brood again. Lots of brood on this side. Let's take a look, see if I can find the queen. It's really warm. That's good news. It smells really good. That's good news. If it's stinky, that's a problem, but it's not. It smells good. Nope, no queen on this one. There's nectar and pollen, but no eggs. Let's check one more frame. Ooh, that one's really stuck. Okay. Oh, lots of larvae in there. Oh, there's a brand new baby bee I see. Oh, guess what? I found the queen. All right, I'm gonna put this down. Oh, no, I lost her. She's so sneaky. I saw her and then I lost her. Let's see if you can help me find her. Oh, there she is. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can get her close up to the camera. See if you can spot her on the bottom there. I'll hold it there for a second. She's kind of hiding underneath here. Let's see if I can balance here. She's right here. Okay, I'm gonna put this down this way. I'm gonna take this off the stand here. There's the queen. What do you think? Thumbs up? So now that I know she's there, there's some larvae. You can see the larvae in there. It looks really good. It looks nice and juicy in there. So I found the queen. I'm gonna look over this way and see if we can see any eggs in there. Oh, maybe. It's a little hard to tell. But we found the queen. We found the drones. We found the larva. So now we can put it all back together and come back 10 days later. We know it's fine. We know that there's food. We know that she's laying it, or we know that the queen is there. So we've got evidence and we can close it all up. So after I'm done inside my beehive, I'm gonna make sure I put it back like I found it, because I wanna make sure that I'm being respectful of their home. So I put all of the frames back the way that I found them, in the order that I found them. So I'm gonna put this one back in here. Moving nice and slowly. I'm gonna use my tool, my hive tool, to pull everything back into place. Just like this. I gotta put the feeder frame back in. So I gotta make enough room. I'm gonna put this one back in. Just like that. There we go. Now, I don't want to squish any of these bees when I put the lid on. So I'm going to give them a little bit of a shake back into the hive. Smoke them down so that they are not in the way when I close the lid. And then very slowly, I'm going to cautiously put my lid back on, giving the bees enough time to move out of the way. Check over here. Oh, yep. There we go. Close it up nice and tight. And that's it. We found the queen. We know she's there. So now I come back 10 days later. So the lid is not on so the bees can get out. They don't come out through the top. I'm going to take the camera down. I'll show you where the bees come out. So the bees fly through this entrance here. Hold on. You know what? I got to turn this around because I can't see. There we go. This is where the bees come out. Right there. Now, at this time of year, when it's still a little bit chilly at night, I put this piece of wood in here so that they have a smaller space of air coming in. But as it gets hotter, as it gets warmer, I'm going to take this piece of wood away, and then they have the full front entrance to come in and out. But we want to make sure that the lid is on nice and tight along the top, because they use, if it's not, you'll see here that they cover it with propolis, that's tree sap, to seal it all shut, because they don't like the air going through the top. They want to be able to control the temperature of the hive through one spot right here. All right, I'm going to turn my camera off again for 1 minute and then walk back into the classroom, and I'm going to open up the floor to anybody who has any questions to ask me. So think about your questions, and I'll be right back in 1 minute.
If you have any questions for Cassie, you can put them into the chat, or you can, yeah, just have a minute to think about anything that you'd like to ask her. I see there are a couple in the chat. We will answer those when she gets back inside.
right. So that was pretty cool. We don't always get to find the queen, and we did today. So that makes me super excited. So I'm gonna see if, I don't know if I can I pull up the chat questions here and see? Here we go. Let's see. Here we go. All right. Okay, so I have a question here that says, do you ever not split the hive and remove the new queen? So there we go. So if the hive gets too large, if they're building a new queen and if the hive gets too large, then they are going to swarm. What they're telling me is that it's not enough room in there and they want to divide into 2 colonies. If I don't take them out, they're going to swarm and they're going to end up in someone's attic or in someone's barbecue or in their recycling bin. So I do need to take them out if I'm going to be a good neighbor. So I'm going to split them in half. What I can do in the case of this hive is I can leave the old queen in that box with half of the colony and take the frame that has the queen cell on it and move it into a new hive. And then that way I have 2 hives. Now, if I don't want 2 hives, I might find another beekeeper who needs some of those frames of brood and share it with them. Okay, let's see. What else here? I don't know, when I have this chat up, I don't know if you guys can see me. When the bees make it says, what does stinky mean? So if the hive is stinky, close this. If the hive is, there's a couple of different smells that bees make. So one smell that they make is banana smell. When it's banana, that's the alarm pheromone. We talked a little bit about that earlier. If it smells kind of rotten in there, that probably means that the brood is dying. So either it means that the nurse bees can't take care of the brood, or they have some sort of disease. And there's a handful of diseases that honeybees can get, just like any pet. If you don't pay attention, they can get sick too, just like other pets and like humans. So if we smell something, then we need to do a closer inspection to make sure that the bees don't get sick. And that was one of the other questions, is do bees get sick? And yes, they do. They also get mites. That's the biggest problem for honeybees here in North America, is they get mites. I just saw a bee on my hair. They get mites called varroa mites. That's our biggest problem. So we need to make sure they're almost kind of like head lice, except for they suck the bees' fat bodies. So we have to make sure that our bees don't have mites. And there's some natural treatments that we can do to make sure that the bees don't get mites, because if they do, ultimately the whole colony will die because the mites will eat the larva. So that's no good. Okay, let's see what else we have here. I think that I saw a couple other questions, but it looked like that. Let's see, there we go. Okay. We talked about the lid already, and how do the bees regulate the temperature of the hive? What a great question. So the bees, if it's too cold, then the bees huddle together like penguins and they wiggle their body and flap their wings. And that keeps the colony warm. So they huddle in the middle and they rotate around and wiggle to keep it warm. In the summer, if it's too hot, the bees bring water into the hive. So they suck up water into their honey crop, and then they spit it out in the hive and they flap their wings. And they move the water particles all through the hive to cool it down like air conditioning. So the bees warm and cool the hive by flapping, wiggling, and bringing in water. Okay, let's see. Okay. Oh, what do I do if I accidentally lose a queen from my hive? And what species of honeybees are in the hive? And the challenge. Okay, so we're working with Italian honeybees. There's 6 types of honeybees. The most common are Italian honeybees. There's an Asian honeybee, a Russian honeybee, a Canarlian honeybee, and what did I miss? An African honeybee. And each of them have different characteristics. Some of them are able to communicate better. Some of them are better honey collectors, and some of them are better in warmer or colder climates. So we use Italian honeybees. It's called Apis mellifera. The queen bee does not get challenged by the female worker bees because the queen bee is the only bee that can lay an egg. So If there is no queen in the hive, then a worker bee, because the queen pheromone or the queen smell is gone, a worker bee might try to lay eggs, but she won't be successful because she hasn't mated. So the queen can, or the colony can only survive if they have a queen. And then I see a question popping up, says, do the bees ever abandon their hive? And wait, maybe I'm going to go with maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, there was a lot of news about bees leaving their hive. And nobody ever figured out why. So bees generally do not leave their hive unless they're swarming, but when they're swarming, half of the colony stays behind, and then the old queen leaves with half of the colony to start a new home, but there'd still be bees in there. So colony collapse disorder is a term that they started using when bees abscond, leave the hive, and we don't know why. So scientists haven't figured out what colony collapse disorder is and why they abscond, but it's very uncommon. It doesn't happen very regularly. Okay, there was one more in there that I missed, I think. Whoops, I just knocked myself off there for a second. Okay, let's see. There was one more question. What do I do if I accidentally lose a queen? And that's the last question I have in the chat there. So sometimes something could happen to the queen. She could just die of old age, or they could the bees could make a new queen, a virgin queen, and then she could fly off on her mating flight and get eaten by a bird, or die because she can't find her way back to her hive. So sometimes you could lose a queen. If there's eggs in the hive, then the worker bees can build a new queen by feeding it royal jelly if there's eggs in the hive. But if there's no eggs in the hive, if they have a brand new virgin queen and she hasn't started laying yet, she flies off and gets eaten by a bird. So there's no eggs, there's no queens, the whole colony will die. So what I can do is I can find somebody who breeds queen bees, and I can buy a queen and I can add it to my colony, or I can go to one of my other hives and find a queen cell like we saw today in this hive, or bring the bees a frame of eggs and then they will build their own queen. So I have to decide as a beekeeper, am I going to build my own queens, or am I going to buy a queen from a queen breeder? Now, the advantage of making your own queens is it's super cool, but the disadvantage is that the bees can't work. There's no baby bees in there for 3 to 4 weeks. So if your job is honey production, which mine isn't, then I probably wouldn't want to breed my own queen. But because I don't make honey, I like raising my own queens. So I think that that's all the questions in the chat. If I missed your question accidentally, please type it again while we're saying goodbye. But if you have a question after tonight and you'd like to ask me, you can reach me at Honeybee Center. I believe I just saw it pop up in the chat there. My email is cassie@honeybeecenter.com. I'm on social media at Honeybee Center Kids, and here at Honeybee Center in Surrey, BC, 176th Street. And also you can just call us 604-575-BEES. So if you have any bees or beekeeping questions, I definitely encourage you to reach out to us here at Honeybee Center. We love to share information with you, and we will be doing beekeeping experiences with kids all through the summer. So hope to meet some of you in person real soon. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'll hang around just in case there's any last questions.